Okay. We look like we're ready to go. We're going to get started here. It's not too bad. We have 28 people. I figured everything was going to be dropping down as the warm weather comes and everybody's out shooting. So welcome everybody to the Digital Forum. We have 28 people, and we'll be talking about a variety of stuff today. The main topic for the second hour is going to be processing your images using other software, although I will also show how to do it in Lightroom. At least show some extra things that you can do in Lightroom to help process your images. I'm going to show also the Nikon software for the Nikon cameras that is out. And we could talk about other stuff. So we got a lot of different things we can talk about. I don't know, we were talking before the show started with Clint. He was having problems with his flash unit on his Sony camera. So it's always nice to learn a little bit more of, what everybody's having problems with. Let me bring me up. So, does anybody have any questions or things they'd like to talk about? Anybody in the panel?
Jeff, I do have a question, and I know it's probably getting a little bit ahead of what you're talking about. I've only gotten into photography in about the last 2 years, so I consider myself really the novice coming in. I have used Lightroom, I have used Photoshop. What I'm trying to get from the people here, because they have more experience than me, is for the hobbyists like this. Some people talk about Luminar being a lot quicker to edit, so on and so forth. And I'm just wondering what some of the consensus is from people.
Sure. Anybody want to comment on it first? And
I will. I use Lightroom, and I personally don't want to learn something else because learning Lightroom is hard enough.
Great.
There's a long learning curve with it, but once you get it mastered, it's really good.
Yeah.
I use Lightroom and then finish in Photoshop, so I use both of them. But I agree with you, Kathy. Between the two of them, that's a lot. Yeah. I don't even use the filters anymore, like DxO. I have them, and I find myself not using them. I have a add-on for Luminosity Masks, and I use those.
Okay.
And see, I found myself, I've taken some classes like at WCTC, MATC, so I'm familiar with them. But I find myself getting into Lightroom very specific, spending a lot more time editing than I think I need to.
Well, the best thing that I always suggest is to pick one and stay with it, so that you learn the one instead of, trying to do multiple ones, because they all get sort of complicated. I know Lightroom the best, and I think Lightroom is still the best one out there. But a lot of people do like Luminar, especially like the new Luminar AI, because it's so easy to use and has a lot of presets that will just jump you pretty close to what you need in an image. So all of them get a little complicated as you delve into them, so you really need to pick one and then stay with it. Lightroom just has a really good cataloging system, so that's why I like Lightroom. Most of the other ones are browsers that just use your setup that you have on the hard drives to understand or to look at the images. So that's fine. I like the cataloging part because I can do a little bit more with it. So
yeah, I would echo what Jeff is saying. I think to be organized, and when Jeff talks about cataloging, it's just being organized. To paraphrase it, how to get your photos organized in a way where you can go back and find them. And if you're new, it's not that big a deal, but you're going to find a couple years down the road, it's like, well, where is that photo I took 5 years ago, you know, back in the Smokies or wherever? And then you know, there's different ways you can edit within Lightroom. You can always do auto, which gets you probably 90% of the way you want, you know, a photo to look. And so anyway, long way of just saying I've gone the way of Lightroom, and from there, you know, we've gone out to other places. Other editors do post editing, but and like the pros say, you know, they do 80–90% of their work in Lightroom anyway before they go off to any other editing tool to do a little more post processing. But I think that's, you know, it's not that expensive. There's a cost to it, but in the long run, I think it's really worth it.
I'm kind of with Jeff and Brian on that also. I started with Lightroom because of the cataloging, and Lightroom's improved quite a bit since version 1, obviously. And then I also have Nikon Software, which is DxO now, I believe. And I use that occasionally. And there's filters in there to use if you like doing something with filters. A couple other things you can do in it. So, but mostly Photoshop and Lightroom does the trick.
Yeah, Tony. Oh, you're muted.
Does anyone use? Not me. There. Is anyone use? Does it happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
I don't have anything else going.
Yeah, it's a echo from boy, maybe there's a setting that you need to do.
Is your microphone too close to your speakers? The feedback loop.
No. Maybe if I reduce the volume.
Go under your settings, Tony, and by your microphone, go to audio settings, and go to audio, and under suppress background noise, turn it up to high, and also make sure that echo cancellation is checked.
Okay, and settings is where?
What's the date or time
on a PC.
You see where your microphone is? The microphone where the mute button is on the Zoom app?
Yes.
Okay, there's a little up arrow right to the right of that.
Oh, okay.
Click on that. At the very bottom of the drop down box is audio settings.
Okay.
Then when it brings up the settings box, go to audio.
Mm-hmm.
And about halfway down, right below where it says test microphone, there's suppress background noise.
Okay.
Make sure that's on auto. That's probably your safest bet.
Oh, it was on auto.
Okay, then go down farther under music and professional audio and make sure you have echo cancellation checked.
Okay, echo cancellation. Okay.
I don't see that, Jeff, on my PC.
Yeah, I don't see.
Okay. First, you need to check show in meeting options to, and I believe that's where it's hidden.
Okay.
Yeah. Check the show in meeting options to enable original sound.
I did.
And then echo cancellation should be
is checked.
Oh.
I'm not sure.
Well, that ruins every idea I have of what we're getting feedback. That's weird.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And it is coming from your microphone. See, that's why it works a little better if you put headphones on. Then you don't get that problem.
Yeah.
If he muted his audio output, we might be able to hear him.
Yeah, Tony, you could turn your speaker off while you talk, and then we shouldn't get that. But then you
Okay,
won't
where
hear
was
us.
it?
You'll have to turn it back on.
Where is that?
That would be wherever in your Windows settings to turn audio off. I'm not sure in Windows where you turn your speaker off.
Where do you set your volume, Tony?
Yeah, I have that. I have it low. Okay, I will type my question.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll have to figure out why it's doing that. That's strange.
Yeah, nothing is, whoop. All right,
Yeah.
mute. Come on.
Some people pay a lot of money for that kind of reverberation.
Yeah. That's why it's a lot of times it's better to have headphones in. That's why I've got an earpiece in. If I didn't have my earpiece in, I'd be echoing. So
Yeah, get in with a rock band there, Tony.
yeah. Yep. So okay. Yeah, we'll talk more in the second hour about processing, and that might, help you out, Rich, too, with it. But you can pretty much see that a lot of us are doing Lightroom. Luminar's pretty good. I've used On1, but I still always come back to Lightroom. As I do 90% of my work in Lightroom. Most of the time, it takes me 15-20 minutes to do an image, so it's not a lot of time. And then 10% of the time, 10 or 20%, I end up going into Photoshop to do heavy editing. So
And that's kind of what I've been averaging, maybe 5-10 minutes,
yeah,
but a lot of, like you
So-
say, it's for me, it's just quick hobby shots, so on and so forth.
right.
And like I said, I'm just kind of afraid I'm going down a rabbit hole that's going to get worse and worse and worse.
Well, it all depends on how fancy and good you want your images, and sometimes it takes longer. I mean, I've been known to spend an hour or two on an image if it's something that I really want and I know I'm going to blow it up very large. I can, once I get done in Lightroom, which is generally 15 or 20 minutes, I can spend an hour or two in Photoshop, fixing little things that I'm not happy with and such. So yeah, it can get crazy, but to me, that's part of the fun of it, is getting, a really nice image. So, okay, well, we're getting a few questions here. First one, because Jeremiah, you brought it up. What are you using for luminosity masks? So we got that as one question from
Yeah,
Karina
I was just
Smith.
typing an answer to that, but I'll be glad to talk about it. I use
Yeah.
Tony Kuiper's suite. It's a little expensive. I think the whole suite costs about $99. You can usually get sales on it though, and discounts on it, but it has a whole slew of tools. And not only that, it comes with a real set of really good videos by Sean Bagshaw on not only how to use his tools, but how to do luminosity masks. And I've gone through all those videos and have it on my list to go back through some of them again this week to refresh my memory on some of them.
Oh, okay.
What is her name?
His name is Tony Kuiper. I think if you Google TK, TK, or I should be able to put the.
Yeah, his name's familiar.
His latest is called TK7. Here it is.
I think he was the first one with luminosity masks, if I
had
remember
another one that
correctly.
was free before that, and I ended up buying this. And I honestly don't use a lot of the tools because he has a lot of tools that do Photoshop stuff, and he puts things all in one button or something like that. And they're kind of cool. It's kind of cool, especially if you're new to it. It's a quick way to find how to group things and do things. But I use it mostly now for luminosity masks. But one feature that I use constantly is a feature where you can put in the size of the image, the vertical and horizontal, and then you can put in a percentage of sharpening. And so with one click, you can fit an image to both horizontal and vertical, or either one, and it creates another copy of that image at the export size and for export sharpening. I always use that now, because whenever I save to JPEGs, I just click on that, put in the size, put in the percentage of sharpening, usually 25–30%, and then take a look at the quick image, save it out as a JPEG, and then close that window and don't save it. It makes a copy.
Okay.
So I use that constantly.
Question on luminosity masking. What kind of images do you like to use it on?
Well, I do landscape photography, and so I use it on almost most images. A little bit. I might want to lighten an area that's too bright, for example, and I will do a luminosity mask and then mask out everything except for the one area I'm concerned about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I've used one, and I can't think of the name of the guy. And I don't have my Photoshop up and running. Maybe I can remember it later. I think it was Arnold. Brian, it was the one that you suggested.
Yeah, Arnold was one that I played with several years ago.
Yeah, and he has his masking, and his setup in Photoshop isn't too shabby. I use it every once in a blue moon. I just found other ways that it works for me. So
Jeff, weren't you playing with Matt Kay's luminosity masking? Matt Kay's?
Yeah, I played with Matt Kloskowski, had a system for luminosity masking as well. His was free, so I didn't spend a whole ton of money. He has just some good videos that I bought, and he had with the videos just a little action that created a whole series of luminosity masks for you for that image, and that works pretty nice too. So yeah,
the free one that I used before I bought Tony Kuiper's was Greg Benz, BENZ. I just looked in my actions, and I still have his actions, and it creates all the masks that you need, both dark and light, and you can pick from them in your channels. The one key with using these kind of freebies that do that, it does it quickly and easily, but if you don't delete them when you're done with them and you save the file, it creates huge files because it saves all the information.
That was the trouble with Matt's, and he even said you have to delete all the ones that you don't want before you save the file. The Arnold one, I'm just trying to see if I can get my Photoshop pulled up here. Let's see, do I have anything? I can open that. What is it? It's called Raya Pro 4. I think he has a 5 out now, but his are pretty nice. I keep it on my Photoshop, and it's basically a set of actions that creates, it does quite a bit of different things besides just luminosity masks. So that would be another one. I don't remember how expensive it is, but if you type in Raya Pro, you'll find out. And he has a lot of videos and everything too, and he keeps updating it. Once you've bought it, he keeps updating it for free, so that works pretty good.
Yeah, I recommend somebody learn luminosity masks that way, unless you want to buy the whole thing and get all the videos. But just seeing what it creates and then being able to look at the different channels and pick the one that you want is a good way to learn what a luminosity mask is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little complicated. It's hard to get your mind around, but once you understand it, it's really nice for controlling certain tones that you might want to lighten or darken. So yeah, it can be pretty good. Well, let's do this quick one. Does anyone know when Sony runs their sales on cameras and lenses? I don't. I don't watch. Yeah, Tony, you want to try?
I fixed it. My
Oh, you
laptop's
did?
been giving me a lot of problems, and there were 2 instances of the webinar going.
Ah, very good. Well, that's good to know too.
And then the other thing is anyone using Adobe Elements, which I'm finding easier to use than Photoshop or Lightroom.
Yeah, I don't know. Do we have anybody in this group? I don't. I find Elements very difficult.
Okay.
I see Tom Parker uses Elements 2020. I stopped watching Elements at about 2018, 2019, because I've actually found Photoshop to be easier for the way it works. So, yeah.
Okay. I'm just wondering because I'm not, you buy it and it's not a subscription.
Right.
So that
But
appeals to me.
the trick with it is that every year they bring out a new version, and if you want to keep up with the latest things with all the new things that they keep adding to these programs, you almost always end up buying the new version. So in a way, you're doing a subscription. You're just doing it in big lump sums instead of monthly.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm
yeah.
such a basic user that
Sure.
I don't need a lot of stuff. I just do basic stuff with it. So when there are upgrades and new versions, whatever, I don't care. I don't get them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in the long run, it saves me money. And I'm
Right,
also
yeah.
experimenting with On1 and Affinity.
Okay. Yeah, Affinity's pretty good, but it's as complicated as Photoshop. But it's a good program.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know what Elements is like today, but that was the first one that I was using when I got back into photography, maybe 10 years ago. So what I'm going to say, I don't know if it still applies. But first of all, there's no cataloging, or there was no cataloging, or no way to organize your photos. So I had stuff all over the place, and maybe it was me, and I just didn't have a way of being organized. And that caused me a lot of problems, down the road, which I eventually, I got decluttered when I went to Lightroom, let's put it that way. The other thing is, and I don't know if this is still true, but, whereas Lightroom saves edits, they're soft edits, they're not hard edits. When you make a change, it doesn't change the metadata per se. It used to be back in Elements, if you would make an edit and you'd want to save it, you then had to save it as a JPEG or a RAW file or something. So you're always changing the file itself rather than, doing soft edits. And that's a big difference between the two. So back in Elements, I'd make one change and then I'd say I want to change it again. And then I had another copy of that same thing. And it just proliferates. Whereas Lightroom, you're always making soft changes, if that makes any sense. And maybe somebody else can explain that better. So I don't know if that's still the way Elements is, but that's the way it was. And that's why I just got totally discouraged with it.
Yeah, I got to admit, I haven't kept up with Elements, so I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's more destructive than, say, Lightroom is, where Lightroom is a non-destructive editing plus a good cataloging system.
Yeah, non-destructive.
So it's Elements. I'm just not sure because I gave up with it. I tried to follow it and it got so confusing trying to work with Elements and then trying to work with Photoshop. And with Lightroom is fairly simple compared to Elements to me. And so, but I know there's a lot of people using Elements, a couple in our camera club, Jane Hurst for one. So you could, if you got questions, try asking Jane, Tony, on it. Okay, I do have one. Somebody, Jim Korosky, said they're having Sony sales from seminars on the West Coast with West Coast retailers, so you can watch that. I haven't seen anything, although I don't follow Sony that often. They're selling quite a bit of stuff, so I don't think they're actually going on sale all that much. And Ken Bowman, I'm not ignoring you yet. It's just that Gigapixel's a little trickier, so I'm trying to pick up some of these quick ones first. Sandy Manson has just got a Lens Baby Velvet 56. Anybody have any tips for getting started with it? Anybody playing with the Lens Babies? I haven't. I keep looking at them and I never pull the trigger on buying them. Sorry, Sandy, can't help you there. Okay, Ken Bowman's asking about Gigapixel AI. He bought it and tried it out on a few older low-resolution pictures taken with a Sony Mavic. Oh boy, that is an old camera. He was expecting more from the software, especially when people were in the picture. Ken, you gotta try. I don't know if anybody else in this group's used Gigapixel. It does a fairly decent job, but it doesn't do miracles. You can enlarge it about 2 or 3 times. 4 is about the maximum that you can go with it. So don't try to go too far, even with those small old files. They're just, it's not going to do that great. I found it does better than Photoshop, especially with Photoshop's new enhanced resolution setting in there. But I've had it do, I had an image for from a person that was just a screen size image, and I was actually able to take, it was 700 on the long side, 700 pixels, and I was able to get it up to 2100 pixels, and it really came out fairly decent. But depending on the original size, and those sensors weren't that great, the Gigapixel can only do so much. So it's just a trickier one. So that's probably where it's just probably, if you double the size of the image, and then there's a couple of settings in that image that you can try to change with it. Let's see. Oh, that's the wrong program. Too many programs on my computer. Let's see. I'm just pulling up Gigapixel now. Well, maybe I should do this. Share desktop. Okay, so you're seeing my screen, I believe. So this is just a screenshot. And on the left side is the original. On the right side is the enlarged one. Now, I've got it enlarging using width, but you've got scale, width, and height. So you can see the difference from this one, which was 514 pixels by 280 pixels. and I've got it going up to 2400 pixels by 1307, and you could see how much it sharpens and can fix an image, and that's quite a bit of an enlargement. But there's also, working with a low resolution image, you can try using that setting, one that's very compressed. And you try a bunch of these different settings to see which actually makes it a little better. I use it pretty much in auto most of the time just because that works pretty good. And then you do have adjustments for noise and blur, and even color bleed. But you could see it doesn't do too bad. Now this is just a screenshot. I don't have I wonder if I've got an image here. Let's see, I might have a JPEG. Let's not use that. All right. That's way too big anyhow.
Hey, Jeff.
Yep.
Photoshop's got an enhancement like this also.
Right. What I found is that one works pretty decent, but actually Gigapixel does it better. For certain things. For really small images, Gigapixel does it better. For better images that you just want to enlarge to get to, like this image, which starts out already at 4,000 pixels, the enhance in Photoshop will actually, you can really blow that up large. Because if you're starting with a good file, it makes it better. If you're starting with a really small file, I found Gigapixel to work a little better. But it all depends on the images, and so I use both. And I just go back and forth, and I try actually both of them to see. But it does make a difference. I don't have a good portrait one here, and this is such a big JPEG, it's actually shrinking it down. So, and I think it's actually doing a worse job. But on a lot of stuff, Gigapixel works nice. Let me close that. I don't want to update right now. All this new stuff is, let's see, I'm trying to remember. Well, yeah, while we're doing it, let's do this. Yeah, we'll use that anyhow. Let me open this in Photoshop while I've got my screen sharing. So for people that don't know about it, there is this enhanced section. That's not it. I always have a hard time remembering where it is. Okay. All right, Pat, can you tell me where it is? I forgot.
Me too. I had to hunt for it.
It's yeah, that's.
I thought it was under. Did you try under the edit?
They keep moving it on me. It's not there. Wait, maybe it's this. It's here. Here it is. It's under the three dots.
Got it.
Enhance. It's not one that they make, and then what it's called is super resolution, and it doubles the image resolution for large displays. Now this is a fairly large image as it was. This one is 7,300 pixels by 4,900, so it's a 36 megabyte image, and this is going to double that size. And right now it's so zoomed in that, but it's doubling the size of it. So if I hit enhance, it will now double it, and it just takes a minute. So what it's really meant for is something that if you want to do a really large display on a wall, but it's really meant for something where you have a good exposure right off the bat and a good file, raw file. You can also do it with JPEGs, but it's a little trickier to get the JPEG in. And you could see that it takes quite a while for it to process this image. But it's going to turn it into a 14,000 by, what would that be? About 10,000. 14,000 by 10,000 image. And that's a pretty good sized image to be able to print. I'm probably using up all my memory on my computer while it goes through and does this, but it works a little nicer if you don't have quite as big of a file, or if you're going to crop a file. I found it works out pretty nice when I photograph birds. If I crop a bird down, it would work better. I think I'm just going to cancel out because this is going to take so long. But that's how it works. Now, I guess the simplest thing would have been is if I would have cropped it. So say you cropped it to something like this. And then, see, I made that just a 2610 by 1520. And it's still going at it here. Let's see if I stop that one. And then go and do that again. Now with this one, where it's a lot smaller, I can actually, and it shouldn't take quite as long, but you can see the section that it's looking at right in here. You can actually see and read those keys on my Stream Deck. And so that's giving you really super resolution. And it would, and I don't think I'll run it, but it will cancel. It will double that size to 5,000, which is a pretty good size. So for bird photography and stuff where you're doing extremely large crops, it works pretty well. This is my streaming setup that I use to do these meetings.
Jeff, excuse me for interrupting, but I'm going to log out and log in again. I've lost my main Zoom window and I've been trying to get it back and I can't, so I'm going to log out.
No problem. You should be able to pop right back in as a panelist when you come back. So
okay.
No problem. If not, I'll bring you in. Okay.
May I add something?
Sure.
Person asked about a Lens Baby 56, where they should start.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she's shooting, I think it was a lady, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Shooting
Sandy.
a full frame or crop sensor. I have a crop sensor, and basically what I've done to try to get a feel of it is I set up a set of flowers and some good light. And then what I did was just basically play with the apertures, just take a series of shots, changing the aperture to see what the effect of the Lens Baby does to those flowers. You know, at the lower, they're going to be more blurry, And then of course it starts sharpening up as you move up your f-stop. And that was, to me, was a good way for me to get started to see what look do I really like, depending on what the subject matter is. I ended up with around about a f4 for most of my flower shots, using that Lens Baby 56 on a crop sensor. Now she's on a full frame sensor. It's going to be a little bit different structure. She's going to have more blurry options than I do because of the being at a full frame, and the focal length will stay at 56, whereas mine at 56 is probably more like an 85. So,
Sure.
but that's the only way I know of. There's no shortcut to learning Lens Baby other than just getting out there and just trying the various different apertures and see which one you like.
Right. Okay. Great. Hey, Jim. Sure.
Hi there. I'm sorry I'm a little late. I was in a really noisy environment and that wasn't going to work before. Can I just comment a couple of things that we've already passed? Somebody asked about the Sony cameras and I didn't write in everything, but if you're looking for something, I would write Sammy Cameras. That's SAMY in California. They've been doing 10% off of camera bodies and 15% off of lenses periodically. So that would be worth asking about. And then I know people were asking earlier about luminosity masks, and On1 has a luminosity mask for every filter they have. So there, for instance, if you were going to do some kind of a misty effect or fog effect, that can be a little tricky in Photoshop, but you can do it in On1. And there's a luminosity mask for every filter. And then you can adjust it from there too. And I'll just mention one last thing about On1. On1 used to not play as well with Lightroom. When you would send your pictures out into On1, then do adjustments and send them back, those adjustments were permanent, but they've just fixed that. And now in the latest version, you can now make it, you can tell it to make it a smart photo as it moves it back and forth. So those adjustments are never lost and you can go back and completely re-edit at any time.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't been paying attention to that. I haven't been using On1 lately, so good to know. Okay, we got a couple of questions from Roger Krill. First one is asking Brian, what phone app are you using for GPS track logs? And I know Brian sort of disappeared here, so.
No, I'm here.
Yep.
I'll have to look it up on the phone. I haven't. Go ahead and talk about something else, and I'll get back to it.
Okay.
I'll put it up on the board. Thank you.
Sure. And Roger also mentioned, and I was hoping Marty was going to be here to demonstrate it. Maybe somebody else in the group does have. Canon offers their own professional software for processing images that's free. Just like Nikon has their free software, and Sony also has free software. So you actually don't need to buy anything if you just want to do regular processing. And that's part of what I want to somewhat show in the second hour, and we'll see what we can pull up here. But there's a lot of free programs out there, and the best ones are actually the ones coming right from the camera manufacturers, because they know their sensors, they know their glass, and all that the best. So actually, I'm playing with the Nikon software. I had just listened to Vincent Versace on Nikonians, and he's a Nikon ambassador, and he was talking all about Nikon developed the software program which does basic standard editing, but since they know their sensor and their glass and the processing that the camera can do, they can control that raw file a lot better. So we'll look into that, talk about that a little bit. So
Jeff,
let's see,
just
Roger.
real quick, I want to add something that Jim made me think of when he was talking. He was mentioning
Sure.
a dealer, a camera dealer, I think in California, was it, Jim? I learned something at the landscape photography conference that I went to a few weeks ago that is kind of interesting. There was a dealer there that said that they didn't charge, someone said they didn't charge sales tax on their camera equipment. And so I spent quite a bit of time talking with the guy that ran that shop. It's a shop in Salt Lake City, and he said that the legality of charging sales tax is that if your company does over a certain amount of money, and I don't quote me, but I think it was $500,000 a year in a state, then they have to, if it's over that amount, they have to charge sales tax. And they are in this company, it was called Picture Line. They're in Salt Lake City. And I specifically asked him if they charge sales tax to Wisconsin residents, and he looked it up. And he said they did not at this time. The companies like Adorama and B&H obviously do more than that amount of business in every state. So they have to charge sales tax on all their equipment. But if you find a company that doesn't do much business in your state, they're not required by law to charge sales tax for the residents. This Picture Line said that they had to charge sales tax in Idaho because they were close to Idaho and they got a lot of business from there. And of course from California because they get a lot of business from there. But as of right now, they're not doing enough business in Wisconsin to be required to charge sales tax on their equipment.
Can I just say that may be true, but technically you're supposed to declare that on your taxes. So
yes,
just so nobody out there is under the illusion that, you know, you can get away with that. I mean, you could, but if you were caught, they would definitely ask for that money.
right.
Yep. Yeah, it's called a use tax, and I end up paying a bunch of it. That's why I'm happy when a company does charge sales taxes, and I don't have to worry about paying for it.
Right. Keep
But
track of it, record it.
I was told some years ago that that's a good flag to be audited if you report no out-of-state sales tax. That's a good flag to be audited.
Yep.
I
Because
think
these
most
days-
people don't. More and more people, I mean, don't report it because they don't pay out-of-state sales tax or unreported out-of-state sales tax, because more and more people shopping online it's starting to cover more and more people. But a lot of people don't shop online unless it's from companies like Amazon that already charge it.
Right, which they're charging most of the time. But it is something that, you got to watch. If they don't charge you, you really. For big items, I would pay it. Little items, I don't worry about it quite as much, but I do keep track of all that, and I end up paying it, partially because I'm a business too, and I've got to watch that stuff. But so no, but yeah, it's a good point. I get stuff from a lot of different camera stores. I try to shop locally first, but then I have Bedford Camera out west that I get my Nikon cameras from, and if they don't have it, then I end up at Adorama or B&H. But Bedford is a nice small company, and Moose Peterson recommends them. And if you listen to Moose's podcast, he does give a coupon code for anything that you buy, including cameras from Bedford, and I believe it gets you 10% off. So that can be a decent deal. So listen to Moose's podcast, and you can probably save some money. Let's see. Roger also asked, when he edits a photo in an outside program and brings it back into Lightroom, I have a conflict in the metadata. What is happening, and which pick do I want to resolve it? You would probably want to use they give you two choices, either the one that Lightroom knows or the one that from the outside source. And if you just edit it in the outside source, pick that one. Generally, it gets resolved sooner or later by itself, but I found that's what I end up doing if I get that. It shouldn't happen all that often, but sometimes some of these programs don't quite play right, and it can be, you can get that problem. Sometimes it's just a bad computer read, sometimes it's Lightroom not catching up on its metadata right away. Anybody else have any ideas on that? Doesn't look like it. All right. Yeah, and I haven't found an iPhone app that works easy for me. I know Brian has one, and he can let Roger know on that. I ran into that problem. I broke the cable snapped off in my camera for my GPS setup. So my whole trip, I was using my iPhone to take a reference photo so that I could use the GPS from the camera, and then I just tie it back into the photos that I took in that area. That's the cheap freeway, but because then the GPS is embedded in that first photo, and then you can copy and paste it into the Lightroom files. So, that would be it for that. Just see if we've got anything else going on. Anybody else have some questions? We seem to have caught up. Otherwise, I will start my stuff, and then hopefully, first off, I guess I'll ask, does anybody use the Canon software for processing their images? Or the Sony software for processing their images? I didn't think so. I was going to download the Canon software, but surprisingly, they want a serial number from the camera before they'll let you download the image, download the program. So I couldn't use that. But,
Jeff?
Yep.
Yeah, I had a friend who had a Canon camera, and she needed help organizing her photos on her computer. So I downloaded the Canon software off the internet, and I found it to be, pretty good, for basically helping getting things. I don't know that there was a cataloging feature. I think I organized things manually, by year and subject. But, as a basic editing tool, she wasn't a real serious photographer, but just to, help her edit things, get them organized. It was a nice little program.
Sure.
That was about 2 or 3 years ago.
I used the Canon program, it was a little over 4 years ago when I bought my new Canon, my latest Canon camera, and they had not yet come out with, Adobe wasn't supporting that camera yet, and I couldn't import my photos into Lightroom or Photoshop. And so I had no choice but to go in and use the Canon. And it took about a month for Adobe to start supporting that. That was when they came out with the Canon 5D Mark IV, and I got it early.
Okay.
And I went in and used the program for a few weeks and kind of gave up on it. I got a little frustrated with not being able to do stuff, and I kind of ended up waiting a few weeks until Adobe came out.
Unfortunately, none of these camera companies want to give Adobe the information on how to process the raw file that they've created. And I don't know why. You would think that Canon, Nikon, and Sony would be happy to say, here's how it's done, so that you can get decent results out of other software. But they have to backward engineer it to be able to get the stuff to work. And that's why it can take up to a month for them to bring out those new profiles to make it work. But I never quite understood that. I would think Nikon would be happy that they're using their camera. Here's how the sensors work. But I know Nikon designs their sensors. Sony builds the sensor for them. So it's pretty good. Well, let me show you the Nikon software. This one's, it's not bad. What Nikon has done is they have on the side here, it's just a browser. So I'm in a hard drive that I call my teaching catalog, and it has all my a set of folders, and then you can pick a folder, and when you double click on it, it opens it up in a window down here so that I can pull the files up. So you can actually, as any browser, it shows everything that's on my computer and on all the other hard drives. I just have to twirl down the different ones. Now, the Nikon software, they actually have two pieces of software. The other one that they have is for movies editing. I haven't had a chance to play with that one yet. I've played with this one, and I'm very basic with it, but it does a pretty nice job. Now, you have a lot of good ways to work with it. You've got an adjustment panel. You have an info panel that gives you all the information that the camera's recorded. And it's pretty deep in its in all the information that it has. And even the XMP files, where you've got a lot of stuff that you can put in, is all in here. But under adjustments, you've got a healing brush, you've got a adjustment tool, you've got your crop tool. So the crop, you just draw it out. And I believe we hit enter. So you can crop nice and easy. You have a straightening tool if it's not straight. And then when you're done, I think you just, like I said, I've played with it to a certain point. So let's see. You can zoom in, and this is a panning shot, which actually came out fairly sharp. Let me try to, okay, original, crop all adjustments. Let's see, got to get back. Okay, we want to crop this. And then I believe if we hit enter, we've got it there. So that's the cropping. If you click on the color point, you can actually adjust brightness, contrast, and saturation of specific points. Now, part of my problem is I got so many programs running, this thing's going to run a little slow, but you've got really fine control. And let's see if I desaturate it, what happens. You can see that it's desaturating, and it's basically, you can adjust that circle, and it's just working on the colors in that specific area. And if I don't like it, I can actually move that. And maybe if I just shut down.
Jeff, is this non-destructive?
Yeah.
So it saves the settings in a sidecar?
Right, it's saving the settings as a sidecar file. So all of this would be non-destructive. So that's the nice part. And I believe if I don't like that, I can actually delete it. Or I can actually turn it on and off. So you can see here where I've desaturated the red, you can see here's before and here's after. Or for me, I would never desaturate it. As everybody knows, I would always saturate the colors. You can add more control points. Actually, I would like to darken that. I could add contrast, but I sort of like to just add a little more. So you've got quite a bit of control, and then you can, you've got touch up. So if there's stuff that you want to get rid of, and funny, I don't have anything. Let's see if I just say, I want to get rid of that. I can get rid of that, and it really does a pretty good job of getting rid of things if you want. And so you got control points, adjust the, that's cropping. I gotta get that. I can't quite seem to always get to, I'm trying to look for where we had the control points I don't need, touch up I don't need. You got sharpness and unsharp mask that you can do adjustments with, and I believe you also have a you can do that as a control point, I believe. Some of this stuff is a little tricky to move around in. Come on, I can't. Oh, there's my handle. I couldn't get to my handles. This screen too much, but you've also got adjustments here for it. I can show the affected area so far with like that last control point. And there's also just the standard editing. Boy, it really moved the control here. So you do have, for the regular image, here's the basic edit panel. You got picture control, which is what was in the camera. And I always shoot everything in Vivid, but if being a RAW file, you can change it. And these are all the standard ones that we have available in Nikon. I like Vivid, of course. I've got my white balance control. I can adjust the exposure compensation. So if I needed to, darken the whole overall image, I can. Or brighten it. It's got everything that's built into the camera for Nikon is in here. You got the active de-lighting, which helps adjust the shadow highlights areas. You've got your brightness, contrast, saturate, all your standard stuff. Your levels and curves are all built into it. And the nice part is it really knows everything that that was in the camera you can do. Even going into the camera lens corrections, you've got all sorts of stuff that's in the camera that you're able to take care of. So it's quite a nice program especially for being free. But again, you've got to lay out your hard drive with your images in a way that you're able to access it, because this is just a browser. It's not a cataloger. So, that's the only trick with most of these is they have a browser to be able to find it. You do have a favorites folder that you can set up. And then navigation just shows the image so that if you wanted to see the overall image. I can also look at all my images in a grid view here. And they also have this view that shows you your exposure. So this panning was 1/125th of a second. So for race cars, it works pretty nice. I don't remember if I actually, yeah, I did have a GPS on here. So there's also the GPS. So this is showing where I took the pictures. This is at Road America. So it shows where I had taken the pictures, but you do need a GPS unit that will, you know, give it that information. With these photos, I was using Nikon's GPS unit, but they don't make that one anymore. And the new ones that I have, the darn cable sticks out so much on the new cameras that when I stick the camera into my camera bag, it puts so much pressure that I was having to unplug the cable all the time. So that's turning into a big problem. And this last time I shoved it in the bag, it just snapped the cable right off. I was fortunate I had a tweezers to be able to pull the end of the cable out. So,
yeah, question. So this is non-destructive. So if I would do some editing here in Nikon or in NX Studio, and if I open that file in Lightroom, the edits I did in NX Studio, I would not see in Lightroom, would I?
it would try to bring some of that over, I believe, because all it's doing is making an XMP file that Lightroom might be able to read, but I don't know how well it will, you know, bring it over. Your best bet would be to save it as a TIFF or a JPEG, and then bring it into Lightroom. This is, I think the way I'd end up using this is if I have something that I really like that I wanted to see if I could bring out more of the image, I would use the Nikon software. I may end up using it for, you know, because you can edit their video, and I want to see how easy or hard that video would be.
Have you tried that yet?
Not yet. I haven't had the chance. I installed this about a month ago, and then I ended up going on the trip. But you can create slideshows, do prints, export it. So it's not a bad software for being free. It's, you know, it can do quite a bit. So some people are looking for software. I would certainly say that until you can make a decision, I would try the company's software, because they do know their cameras and their programming in the cameras best. And like I said, I'm still going to use Lightroom, but there are times that I might maybe want to try to tweak a photo a little better, so I may try. I'll have this in my toolbox for stuff to use. So, and it's free.
I think it's pretty impressive for being free.
It's pretty good for a free program.
Was there an auto adjust?
I didn't see one. I would think there has to be.
Yeah.
They put their darn things so hard. I was gonna look and see.
How about if you go up on top to edit up on top?
Yeah.
I mean,
adjustments.
You know, top row.
Yeah. I
try it up. No, I mean top.
Up on the drop
try
downs?
there under edit. Try there under edit.
Yeah, I don't see anything there. Yeah, you would think it's maybe in here, and I just haven't found it yet. Like I said, I'm still rather new, and they don't have a whole lot. If you belong to Nikonians and are a silver member, Vincent Versace goes through the whole program on how it works. And I unfortunately did not have a chance. I think this picture control is pretty much does get you pretty close to a good starting point. But yeah, I'm not seeing one that's just a simple button that jumps out that says, adjust this image.
Do we know if this is good for only Nikon cameras?
I've never tried it on another file. I only have Nikon.
I know.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. It's going to process JPEGs and everything else.
And we'll process a Canon RAW file.
Yeah, I bet you it's not going to do a RAW file from Canon. Just because that's a whole different file. I wonder, one way to find out, let's see. Let's see if I can find my desktop. I had a DNG file, which it would be interesting to see if it could operate a DNG. Of course, now I'm not going to find any of my DNG stuff. All right. Back to that teaching one. Isn't that funny? All this stuff is in RAW. I thought I had a DNG I could maybe bring in quick, but I mean, you can do some stuff with TIFF, because this is just a file. And it's but yeah, it seems to be, it's really set up for the RAW files. I mean, it didn't do a great job on this TIFF, and it was a pretty well processed file because that's the background was replaced on it. So yeah, it's really meant for raw Nikon files. So that's the Nikon one. And like I said, they do have a video one, but I have not played with the video yet. Just to you can trim, combine, and edit, but I don't have videos that I could pull up real easy, but there is that capability with it as well, and you can get into it pretty easily. The other one for people, and we've showed this before, is Luminar AI. And since we don't have, I didn't see any, Robin Lee is asking if you could stitch in that program. I haven't found that capability in there yet. So I'm not sure. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. It brought up that one. Okay. So this is Luminar, and they have a number of different templates, and you've actually have templates that give you different looks that you can go through, and you can purchase other templates. And they come with some standard ones. I've only got some of the standard ones, so I'll go to, like, here's a high key look that it will change my image to high key, or if I want to tack sharp, a little more faded. Here's with a vignette. Now the nice part, you can pick these, and I'll do the high key, let's do the tack sharp. And then if you go into the edit section, what happens is they put little dots here for where it actually did some work. So if you go into like detail, it moved large detail up, and you can just finish tweaking it if you need to. Really would be nice if this was a little larger. There we go. So you can go in and look at these and do some adjustments. Structure is gonna bring out more detail. Enhanced will just do some basic adjustments. And what you end up needing to do is sort of play with it. Light, it brings up all the exposure and the color. I actually think it's a little too warm, but you can adjust your exposure. It has smart contrast that it did. Highlights, if you wanted to adjust that, and then adjusting your shadow detail. So that's the nice part. You do have an erase that will let you get rid of stuff fairly easy. If I didn't like a strand of hair there. And then you draw on it and hit erase, and then it applies it. Well, there it goes. Did a lousy job on that, but wasn't expecting a whole lot from where I grabbed. Let's see if I can, here's the undo. Generally, it will do a little better job if you do something like here. If I didn't like this little blob, that works. It's more for that than anything. Composition lets you crop. So you've got quite a bit of control with this. And the nice part with it is that you can use the templates to help get you what you want and not have to do a lot of work. You've got, with cropping, you do have the original, and you do have all these different ratios that you can crop to. So if you wanted a 4:6, you can go to the 2:3, which is the same as 4:6, and then crop down. So Luminar AI does a nice job. It has a lot of basic stuff in it. Now, where it gets to be tricky is you have the creative, which is where you can start doing more specialty things to it. So you've got the essentials, which is just your basic exposure, cropping, erase, spot healing. You can do quite a bit with that. With the creative, it gets into all the stuff where if I had a sky photo, which actually, let's see. Here I've got this plane, and if I hit sky, it should, I just put in a blue sky. There it did the sky replacement, nice and easy. Even got it inside the hood, which I've never been able to get when I do that with Photoshop. You can do all sorts of positioning of the sky, which that can be nice. Let's reverse that and go to augmented sky, and We'll try. We'll put an aurora in, something Ken and I were trying to catch for the last 10 days. Maybe, Ken, we just got to skip doing it and just using Luminar AI, put our own aurora in. We got that nice lake shot. Maybe that's going to work better, because I looked at my aurora and there was nothing there. But this is to me, this is going way overboard. I don't mind replacing skies with clouds, but to add an airplane, this is just going to me a little far. But and I think there's advanced settings where I can defocus it and flip it and adjust the mask. But this is going, to me, this isn't as much photography as just creating something fun. But the atmosphere one, you can add fog. And I've found that can work nice for certain things, especially with foreground stuff. Sun rays is nice. The dramatic stuff, that can just, it's basically working a lot with contrast. It's not doing a lot in this photo. Street theater. Here you got a lot of different things that you could play with. And you can see as I flip through them. So you can do quite a bit. Now, these you can't do in the free programs, but with Luminar AI, it certainly makes it easy for everybody. I think the toning works pretty nice, especially if you're going to do, convert to black and white.
I have a question.
Mr.
What
Sure.
point do you move from digital photography to graphic arts?
Yeah. Well, to me, it's when you start to get into this creative, I think you're getting more into graphic arts than you are basic photography. I generally don't replace my skies. I try to rather shoot it, the right way, take the time to get it. Although there have been times, especially on this last trip, there were times when I thought, well, I wouldn't mind maybe changing, because all we had were blue sky days, and it would be nice to have a cloud or two in there. And I don't know how much, it all depends what you're using the photography for, I think, is probably the other thing to decide. If you're doing it to be artsy and you're putting it on Instagram or Facebook, and you want to create something that's nice and interesting, doing this stuff is fine. If you're doing a competition, for me, everything has to be my own image. So that's where I draw the line. If I'm getting to a lot of creative images where I'm doing a lot of composites. And so as long as it's all my parts put together, it's whatever I dream up in my head. It's a very fuzzy line from going from graphic arts to photography.
I'm just speaking from the ethics point of view. When you put out a print, should you call it a photography, digital photography, or graphic arts? That's the issue that I have when we have exhibits and stuff like that, that I know that the stuff was manipulated quite a bit, and yet they labeled it as photography.
Yeah, that's a hard one. It's being debated all over the place on, what's right and what's wrong. And I don't have a good answer for it. I do a lot of manipulation to my images because the camera can't catch it all just right. But I don't like replacing skies. I think if I did a sky replacement, I would probably say, mention that in the thing, as it's a photo composite over a straight photograph. But these days, it's gotten to be a hard one, what are the ethics to it? I know listening to Moose Peterson, who does a lot of nature stuff, but he also does a lot of airplanes. He takes out signs and things like that in his photos, and he doesn't mention that. Now, he also does mention it at times because he's shooting for scientists, and then he doesn't do a lot of that stuff. So, yeah, there's a lot of different ways, and I'm not sure. I don't have a good answer for it, unfortunately. I don't know if anybody else does.
I have an image that I'm getting ready to enter into a competition at the first of the month. That is an image that I replaced the sky. It was a picture of an observatory in California taken during the daytime. And I wanted to get in there at night and take it at the nighttime. And so I did a sky replacement in Photoshop just for quick. And I liked the results. I replaced it with another Milky Way shot that I had taken, and I dimmed it down. And it turned out to be a really good photo. I posted it on Facebook with the before and after, and said that I don't typically do sky replacements, but I liked how this turned out. And it also has to do with the competition that you're entering it into. The competition for the rules for this competition is to submit in the realistic category, which I'm submitting to. Anything goes as long as everything in the photo is your photo that you've taken and it looks realistic. And this did look realistic, so I'm entering it into the competition in a few weeks. But I've been upfront about it. I haven't tried to fool anybody. It'll be interesting what the comments are after the competition for people who think that it's unethical to do sky replacements.
Yeah, it's. I know we're struggling with that in Wacko, and we're working real hard to create better definitions so that people know what they could do in Wacko. PSA, when you enter their international compositions, they have a lot of that information in their rules that you really need to read and study, because it's there's the nature category, which has no hand of man and very limited editing, and then there's the open categories where anything goes as long as all the parts are your own. So it's a tough one. So a person needs to be able to read the definitions, and hopefully there's very detailed definitions of what's allowed and what isn't allowed. So. And then it comes down to how do you label it, photo composition or just a photograph. Nobody seems to have a good detailed wording for it, so that's the hard part. But I tend to like to do everything. I'm hoping I get it right in the camera, but if I see something that really came out nice and this part of the sky is just screwing it up and I can't crop it out, I'll just maybe drop a better sky that I shot in.
Yeah, I'm doing a lot of stuff in camera that requires work in post-processing, like stitching. When I was in Zion a few weeks ago, I had a lens on that wasn't a wide angle, and so I just shot like 3 across and 3 down, ended up with 9 photos of something. And it's a little bit different effect too than using a wide angle, but I ended up having to I was working on that just this morning, bringing some of those in and stitching them together, or doing exposure blends to where, I do a Milky Way shot and I've got the Milky Way, but I want the foreground. So you're set up in the same location as it's getting dark and you get a nice good shot of the foreground. And then as it gets darker, you take a picture of the Milky Way and then you put those together, called exposure blends. Those are photographs. There is no line.
Yeah.
Gray area.
It is a big gray, and I think it's going to be a discussion that will go on for a long, long time.
Yeah, it's all art. It's not journalism. One of the clubs that's a sister club of one I'm still a member of on Zoom in California, they have they're a wildlife club and they have the no hand of man. And it's almost like they're doing journalism. And so, you know, I see some of the photos in that club, and it really, something really detracts from something in the photo if you can't clone something out that doesn't belong there, that detracts from your subject. Well, is that photographic arts, or is that a photo of a bird that you took something out of the edge?
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
it's art, and you want to enhance the subject and make the viewer look at the subject and not be distracted by things going on around it. Is that photography, or is that graphic arts?
Yep, that's a good question. I mean, we've manipulated photographs either before we take them, after we take them. In the old days when I first started, I was doing a lot of that stuff in the darkroom where I could do a lot of things. I used to paint on negatives so that I could remove an item, and then would spot in stuff after. So that's always, it all depends on a lot of different things. That was the nice part of working with a 4x5 negative. You could paint out stuff you didn't like and spot tone it back in.
Right,
So,
and it's often said that if Ansel Adams was here today, he would be doing some of the stuff that he tried to do with
Yep.
in the darkroom. The Photoshop really is a digital darkroom.
Yep. And it's just part of photography. I think it's all art in how you see it and how you capture it and how you process the image to create that final image. That's the whole thing of photography. It's not just taking the photo. It's the whole thing, as Ansel Adams had said, taking the photo is the score, printing it out is playing the score, and that's the whole thing. It's not just one step. There's a whole set of processes to this.
Yeah, I sometimes refer to, when I go out, I don't even refer to it as going out to take pictures anymore. I refer to it as going out to collect data.
Yeah, that's probably that's pretty good, because I do a lot of that same thing. The 10 days that we were out shooting, I looked at what I was taking a picture of, and I was already planning what I was going to do in Photoshop to fix it. Because there were things that I knew that I was going to want to remove and things that were going to be able to stay there. But there were obvious little parts that I go, well, this just is not going to work, but I can fix it in Photoshop. So it's, unfortunately, that's not always the way I like to work, but you can't get everything just perfect anymore. Especially when you're on a 10-day trip and you're stuck with whatever you happen to get.
Hey, there's always the open category.
Yep. Yes, there is. So anybody have any questions on Luminar? I just thought we'd go through it a little bit more again so that people could see how nice and easy. And a lot of times, if you don't want to do any of the special stuff, you stay in the Essentials tab. And that gives you all your standard things that you can do for processing. Luminar does have a catalog. You have to point it to the different images so that it knows where they are, and you do that by hitting the plus sign, and you can add a folder of images. And if I actually wanted to, I could just probably say, okay, here's my teaching images with all my categories, and I can add that folder. And now it's updating the gallery, which it's going to take it a little while. But now all the images, which there's 6,796 images, you can see how fast it cataloged everything. I have quite a few in there, and I can just scroll down and it's showing me all the images. And if I want, I just can twirl it down, and here's all the images for me to look at. So it does sort of catalog it. Luminar is getting closer to what Lightroom would be. If I go into the old photos, I've got the different images. This was an HDR image that I ended up doing, and you could see here's the let me, because I know we had a question about HDR. Yeah, Karine Smet, if I'm saying that name right. Sorry if I'm not. She was asking, I've seen a lot of photos that have almost an HDR glamour glow look. She's only finding it in Snapseed app on her phone. Can anybody tell her how to achieve that image? Basically, doing that, a lot of that stuff is done doing an HDR. This is my final image that I did of this truck with a rusted truck with the headlight. And these were the original images that I started with. These three, and combine those three together, and I didn't like that. As you could see, it was flipped the other way, and I like things going so that I can see it like I'm reading into it. So I flipped it as well. But that's just the standard HDR processing. And then on a lot of the HDR programs, you do have a grungier look that you can apply. Now, if I just even take this image and go into the edit, let's see, I've got my Zoom stuff is blocking half my tabs up here, so I got to move the screen around. So in the Essentials edit, I can adjust my composition, and I believe I can flip it. It should be this one. And so that's really all I'd end up doing with that. If I wanted to erase some of the rust, if I didn't like the rust, say I didn't like something like in here, I can erase it. Then I can fix up the lighting in it. Now they don't. Yeah. Smart contrast. And this is just trying to adjust actually a regular one. And if I didn't want to go through all this, I could actually get to the templates, which should be, where are my templates? There they are. So Luminar does have nice templates. You can take a look at, say, how about that? Nah, I don't like that either. Back and see what else they have. But they do have a lot of different things, templates, and you can buy other templates as well, which can get you that same look. And that at least can get you started, and then go back into edit and try to do more things to it. And if you just even saturate stuff, you can do quite a bit. The grungy stuff comes a lot of times by details. And let's see, anything else here. But you can see that I've gotten able to get quite a bit of close to that final one that I did in just using one image with Luminar, because here's the one with HDR, and here's what I've gotten so far. Now, if I vignetted, and I got to figure out where vignette was. I think that's under Pro. Carmen, nope. Portrait. Create. I don't normally do it. Here it is. It's vignetting. So you can do quite a bit to create a nice, interesting image. So Luminar does have a catalog, has templates that you can download. Some you can buy, some are free. And I know Sydney mentioned it in the chat. Luminar does have Luminar Insiders. It's free, and they do have a lunch break at noon to 1 o'clock that if you get signed up under Insiders, they have a 1 hour video explaining how to do things using Luminar AI. I've watched it periodically, and you can ask questions there. So check out Luminar and sign up for their Luminar Insiders, and you can get a lot of good information on how to use Luminar AI and some of the other programs. So let's see, we answered that. And I can maybe show some of this stuff as well in Photoshop, or I should say in Lightroom. Lightroom, of course, is still the nicest to me, but that's mainly because I've worked with it for so long that it's easier for me to do. But let's see if I could get to, and you could see these are all my files. I have quite a few. I have over 328,000 images in my Lightroom catalog. So I have just a few, actually that's spread over multiple hard drives. So some days I have to search a little bit to find things. And this is sports. Yeah, I'm not going to find what I want that quick, but let me just show. You could see here that I shoot everything in 3-stop brackets. Actually 2 stops over, 2 stops under, and a normal. So so here's my normal shot, my underexposed, my overexposed. I found with the way that I shoot that I can generally get away with my normal exposure for most things. But if I want to add more stuff, like here, my shutter speed wasn't really as slow as I'd like it to be. So when I combine these together, I can actually make the water look a little smoother, which is my look that I like to do. So with Photoshop, you got merge to HDR. So it takes those 3 images. And the one thing you don't want to turn on is deghost, because then it will only pick 1 image. And this time it actually didn't really, it actually looks like it took away some of the smoothness, so I probably wouldn't use this one as much. But it takes a little while to create it. But it sometimes can give you a look that you like, and then you can just go in and process it. Now, I've found I'm a biggie these days on using auto. Now, it's already in the merging, it's already done that. The only thing you have to do is presence. which if I wanted to soften everything, I could soften it, certainly not that much, or if I wanted to sharpen it more. Dehaze gives you a nice extra contrast and gets rid of the haze, but you can do quite a bit. Now, I would go in and look at images and see if there's anything I want to get rid of that maybe doesn't add to the photo. I'm not seeing anything that jumps out at me right now, but you can certainly, end up doing that. But I sort of lost my train of thought there. Isn't that fun? Yeah, and I got a couple, you can add, Luminar is a plugin that you can do. So if I wanted to take this one and say, go into Luminar, I can go to edit in, and I've got Luminar AI. I actually at times like Luminar 4. I also have On 1, which has different effects. If I wanted to turn this into a black and white, I generally use Silver Effects Pro, which is Nikon Software. Although a lot of times I've been using, that's where I keep Luminar 4 in there. You can see how my latest Elements is Elements 12, so I'm pretty far behind. If I wanted to get more of a grunge look, I would go into Color Effects. Nick makes a great one that really can bring up the grunge and the color. And what I like, what I tend to use is the one that I use the most is Detail Extractor. That brings out any and all the detail, and you can see you get a lot finer detail in the images, and it also will pop your saturation a little bit. But another one that I also like, and you can add these filters all together, is Brilliance and Warmth, which can add, if you're shooting, like, this image was shot at probably the worst time of day. It was, late in the day. You can actually add warmth to it as if it's early morning or late afternoon. And that's actually looking a little better. So you can add that stuff to it. Now, Nick also has, if you wanted to, let me just create another spot for another filter. They've got a lot of stuff for sort of creating that grunge look if you like it. That was something that came and is sort of on its way out. Some people still like it. I've used what they call their midnight filter. That sometimes creates an interesting look. Or Monday morning with the filling the blahs or something. And I thought I remembered GH. But they've got a lot of interesting ones that you can play with. Some of these I've never quite figured out. To me, I use about 4 of them, and that's the Detail Enhancer, Extractor, Brilliance and Warmth, and every now and then some of these down in here. The image borders, it can be nice if you want to finish the photo off with a border of some sort, and I do like, they give you about 15 different borders, and it can be a nice way to finish an image. I usually like one of these in here that are like the old emulsions. That one's not too bad. So, and then when you're done, you can save that out. And got my highlight warning on. That's why they see the red. So you could see you can create a nice image pretty quick. Only thing I'd probably end up doing yet is, let's see. Right, I need to. Oh man, I forgot where it is now. There it is. Flip horizontal. That's a little more like it. I like seeing the water come and go that way. So that works out really nice. So that's processing in Lightroom, and that's sort of how I would end up doing it. Now, there was something I was going to, a person that I've been watching a lot lately is Terry White. He does a Friday thing, and he's on YouTube, which is probably the easiest way to catch him. He's also, he's an Adobe evangelist, so there's a be.net/Adobe Live, and on Fridays they do 8 hours worth of showing how to do things. This morning before I came to this meeting, I was watching, he has about 4 hours on how to use your iPhone to take better photos, or how to take better photos using your iPhone, and that was pretty good. So take a look at Terry White on YouTube. You'll find a lot of stuff. He's had a lot of interesting things. Something that I also learned watching, I don't know how many people watch the Lightroom Adobe Summit, or the Lightroom Photoshop Summit that Dave Cross put on. One thing that I found that I learned from Ben Wilmore was labeling my files. I've started using a new system where I've been labeling them and actually this is the way I'm importing it now. It's the North Shore, and then it uses the frame number that I have. I don't know if you can see it up here, but at North Shore, and this is the actual frame number 0356, and it takes the first number from the camera that I have set up, and then this, because I merged it, is an HDR, and a TIFF because it went in. The new format, and I was going to try to get to it here. Let's see, I think it should be here. Oh, that's the wrong, not the right one. I don't want to save that. Now I can do it this way under metadata. Helps if I get to the right spot. I have a bunch of new ways. This is the one that once I've gone through all my images, I'm going to start using. And what it is you have custom text. So what it does is it puts the year that the photo was taken. It pulls that out of the metadata. I can actually name it right in here. I would actually change this to North Shore, and then it would add a number on it and would go from 1 to whatever, and that way I would never have duplicate numbers. I don't know why I got the 3 in there, but so I like that because now I can say here's where it was shot, here's the year it was shot, and then it has a separate frame number. And I'll be doing that to this whole group, which is all my 3000 North Shore. I just have to go through yet and still rate them all and get rid of some more of the junk stuff that I have in it. But I found I like that preset of the year, the shoot number, and then just I use a 4 or 5 digit number. Since I take over 2,000 shots, I need to use a large enough number. Now you can also do that on import. And what I use now is, I noticed they have two different, they have custom text, and then they also have a shoot name. So I started using a preset called shoot name with original file number. And I was able then to put in North Shore here, and then it puts in whatever the file number on the camera was. So that worked out really nice, and is giving me a better way to keep track of all my stuff. Oh, we're about done. Anybody have questions? I know I'm sort of babbling on because I didn't have this real well organized, but hopefully you guys learned something from it. Or is everybody asleep out there? Anybody awake? So that's about it. I'm not, I could show, I'll open up On One real quick. But On One works a lot, and they're bringing out a bunch of new stuff as well. And actually, I believe there's a new On One update out. I bet I'll have an update here. But just to mention that On One also does a lot of the same stuff. Yep, see, there's a new version out already. Every year they have a new version, but they have a catalog as well, and they also do a browse. So they sort of have both. So if I go to the catalog, I can go to my teaching images, and the same thing, it shows all my images here. So they do have a catalog, but they also have a browser built in. So that can be sort of nice if you don't want to work with a catalog. You can just browse wherever your images are at. You can also access, as I said, Luminar and On One right from Lightroom, which is how I generally use it. But they have an edit mode. Once you pick out the image you want, you can go to edit, and they also have a manual mode. They have a AI auto that will do your basic adjustments for you, and then you've got all your adjustments here. So you can do it. Their effects section is okay. It's a little harder to use than, say, Luminar. What I like Luminar or On One for is portraits. Now it's going to try to find a face in here, but it doesn't. There isn't a face. But I like it for portraits because you can really control the faces and that. So that's what I use On One for, is people photography. So each of these programs to me have a special use. This one does have a sort of a nice, if you wanted to do black and white and convert it, making it look like regular film. I mean, I used to shoot Delta 100 by Ilford. So if I wanted to get that look, I can get that look just by a click. So otherwise I use Nikon Software for my black and whites. So that's about it for me. It's showing all the ones that I work with and am playing with. So anybody got any last minute questions?
Yeah. When you're setting up these catalogs for these different groups, it's different. In other words, when you load your files in from your camera via your SD card or whatever, and then you decide which catalog you want to go into, whether it's Luminar or On One.
Well, all my stuff just goes into Lightroom.
Okay.
If I was going to pick a different program, then it would just go into a specific spot. The way that I actually have it set up, and I actually had to, and is that I've got it broken down into my teaching hard drive. I have a set of files for Luminar and On One, and then I have a set of files for Lightroom catalog, and that's a separate basic catalog. You need to sort of pick one or the other. If you're going to shoot in Lightroom, import it into Lightroom and then use Luminar or On One as a plugin.
Okay.
And that works the best. You don't want to work on this stuff if you're using Lightroom. Lightroom won't understand what's going on if you do stuff outside of Lightroom. But if you start with Lightroom and say edit in Luminar AI, Lightroom then is able to keep track of it. So
I would also try, Jeff, if I was doing work in another catalog, to see if that catalog isn't, you can import it into Lightroom or vice versa. I don't know
right.
that, but if
You'd
you do a lot
have
of work, sorry.
Yeah, you would have to import it in, you're right. Or you could sync, if you've got it in the same folder, you can actually sync the Lightroom a specific folder, and it will then import in those images that you were working on.
I was thinking more of the work that you're doing as far as cataloging and putting keywords and rating things. I'm not sure if that information will import from into Lightroom. I know I've done some work with Bridge where I've rated things in Bridge and see if it would come into Lightroom. I know it goes from Lightroom to Bridge. I'm not sure if it goes don't remember if it goes the other way.
If you put it in the right slot, in the right spots in the metadata, it should. Keywords would. Some of the ratings will, not all of them. Let's see, keywords, ratings, and any of the metadata, if you're using all the metadata sections, will generally stay with the file, and then when you bring it into Lightroom, it should show up. So, but you got to put it in the right metadata spot for it to show up.
Yeah, that may not be true with Luminar if you're using that as a catalog separately. Will that import? I think I would do a little test before I did a lot of work.
Yeah, you got to make sure that it's writing it to the file and not saving it in the catalog itself. And that's always a trick. Even for Lightroom, you've got to make sure that it's writing all that metadata to the file and not storing it in the Lightroom catalog. And the bad part is the default in Lightroom is it stores it with the catalog and not in the file. And so all of a sudden you go to something else and all of a sudden you've lost all that stuff. So, or if you lose the catalog with Lightroom, if something bad happened, your photos are still on a separate drive, but all that extra data gets lost. So you do want to make sure that it keeps updating the metafile data. Anything else?
There was a question early on from someone who was asked about conflicts with metadata. I was looking for I Googled it. I was having that problem a few weeks ago with a lot of my images that I kept getting errors in Lightroom that I had a conflict with the metadata. And I have found a really good description of when you get that and when to ignore it, when not to. And I was trying to Google it and I couldn't find it. Maybe I'll look for it again. I think I bookmarked it somewhere. Maybe next month I'll find the link.
Yeah, if you find it, that would be good. There are certain things, and again, it's if you do anything outside of Lightroom, you'll get that error because it will notice that something changed, but it doesn't know which it should follow, what it has or what the what you changed would be. So that's when you generally get that question. But yeah, if you find that info, that's always good because I know a lot about it, but I don't run into all this stuff. So. Okay, well, I think it's a little after noon already, and we've had a good number of people here, a lot of good questions, so I appreciate that. I don't know what we'll be talking about next month. It might just be, well, we'll see. I have to see. If I've got a list of suggestions from people, so we'll see what we get, and we'll go from there. I'll put it on the next email that goes out. I am working on maybe sending out emails using MailChimp for everybody, because then I can say a little bit more, other than I've only got a small box with Zoom that I can put info in, and I'm thinking it might be easier to use a MailChimp to email everybody with what's coming up and getting out info that way. But I want to thank everybody for coming on a Saturday morning. Again,
Thank you.
hopefully you guys can get out and get good pictures.
Well, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
All your time you
And,
put into this is neat. Thanks.
Yeah, well, it's fun. I enjoyed doing it. Would have liked to have been a little more prepared for today, but yeah, I think hopefully everybody got something out of it. So, so have a good end of May, good Memorial weekend coming up. Hopefully you guys get a lot of good shots, and we'll see you next month near the end of June. Take care.